Podcast is going to go over what we're going to be doing in this week's lab. We will be using the ovftool to convert some VMs between different formats. We'll also use it to deploy a VM to an esxcli host. And then we're going to use Windows GUI tool, VMware, vSphere Converter Standalone client, I think it's called, to do some conversions of different machines and deploy machines. And then finally, we'll look around at the CLI. Why? Because I like the CLI, and you might have some reason to get in there at some point. So I at least want to show you how to get in there and show you a few commands. So first off, we're going to be using the ovftool. It's a command line tool. You should really look at this user's guide. We're not going to read the whole user's guide. I'm not going to sit here and read the user's guide to you, but mainly chapter 3 is the exciting part for you guys. So basically, we're going to be converting some packages to different formats. If you see chapter 3, you go to chapter 3 and look at the examples, and it's a pretty simple process. ovftool, you tell it the source. In this case, it's telling it an OVF file, and then you tell it a destination, which in this case is an OVA file. It figures out from the file extension you give it what format you want. A couple things to notice. These tools are being run at a Linux command line. This tool has a Linux version, a Windows version, and an OS X version. I'm going to be demonstrating, not really demonstrating, I'm logged on the Windows machine, so I have the Windows version, so my commands will look different. So I'm going to show you a couple things that might be helpful. So here's a way you can convert between different formats. We're going to exercise a couple of those commands from a VMX to an OVF or something like that. And then another option is to install onto an esxcli host. Let me go back up to that menu. Another option is use the OVF tool to deploy directly to an esxcli host. So we're going to do that too. So here's, I guess I was in the right place. Installing, is that right? Oh, here we go. Deploying, that's what I do. Deploy OVF packages directly on esxcli hosts. So here are the commands for this. Basically, you'll put the IP address of your machine instead of the host name because you don't have it. There are some options you may need to specify. We probably do not need to specify many options because we don't have more than one storage type at this point on our esxcli host. However, you might want to specify that the disk should be thin provisioned, and I put that command in that option in the lab sheet. So basically, when you get to the command line to run your tool, it's called ovftool, and basically it's not in your path, so you either need to specify the full path to where it is or CD to where it is so that you can run the tool. And VMware, I think OVF, no. I hate the Windows command line. VMware, that was all I needed. VMware, ovftool. So I was one directory further than where I thought I needed to be. So now when you're in the in the directory, you can type ovftool and run it. And I didn't specify any stuff, so it says, oh hey, you don't know what you're doing. So you can look at the help messages. Right, and that'll tell you all the stuff you can do. But essentially what you want to do is when you run it, you want to specify where the package you want to start with is. So mine was under my desktop. Mine was on my desktop, and I had something called Mint 32-bit OVA. So that would be my source package, and then for your destination package, you can put wherever you want it to go. Users, rich, desktop, desk. Oh, I didn't spell users right. Users, rich, desktop, and then I created a folder, Mint32, and I can call the output Mint 32-OVF. So what that's going to do is that's going to create it in OVF format. What you might want to do is you might want to create another directory somewhere to put these things in, because OVF format creates multiple files. So if you just put them on your desktop or in some directory with other things, that might mess things up. So this command should run and work. I'm not actually going to run it because that's what you're going to do in the lab. So basically, remember, when you're converting between different formats, you're going to specify the output file you want. Here I said .ovf, so that automatically makes it an OVF file. Another thing you can do, we're going to do, is we're going to actually try to send it directly to the esxi host. So if I was going to do that, I would do it something like this. 5 is one of my esxi hosts. That's not what I wanted. Wrong browser window. So yeah, so then it has a slash, so we put a slash at the end. And in theory, that's going to validate the package and try to connect to the esxi host and try to deploy it. So a couple notes about everything you're doing this week from this point on. If your esxi host is running in a VM on this same machine, then it should probably be okay. But if for some reason you actually have your esxi host running on a different piece of hardware, you want to make sure both of those machines are connected to a wired network, because that'll make things go much more quickly. I had mine on the wireless network when I was trying, and I had some issues with network connections timeout. Because when you start this, it's going to take a while, because it has to copy a multiple gigabyte disk over the network to the esxi host. So I doubt you're going to sit there and watch it the whole time. I know I didn't, and I had connection issues timing out. I switched to the wired network today, and I was able to make one work without any issues. So you might want to do that before you start. So that's the OVF tool. The next thing we're going to mess around with is this VMware vCenter Converter Standalone. There are two basic options in here: Convert Machine and Configure Machine. Configure Machine is kind of like almost doing what the OVF tool was doing, where it just converts it to a different. You can convert it to a different format or make changes to it. So I tried to do this with a CentOS machine. It didn't work, so I had to pick my Windows machine. So basically, it will open the VMX file, which is the configuration file, and then it will read the source of that information from that VM. And then it gives you some options for what you want to reconfigure about that VM. So yeah, so you want to select customize to change some of the things we need to change. So one of the things I said you should change, you should at least change the computer name, put some new information in here, and then when I did this, I'll go ahead and try to save you guys some time. It would not let me continue until I put something in the work group field. So go ahead and finish this process and convert it. Yes, when it finishes, you'll have this completed task, and for your submission, I want to see a screenshot of both of these tabs. The other option is to convert machine, and this is really cool. It lets you convert between different VM formats. So in this case, I could just basically pick a VM format if I wanted to, an existing VM, and then I could pick where I wanted it to go. So this is another way I could deploy a VM to an esxi host once it finishes getting this Windows system information. Right, I could use this to deploy it directly to my esxi host, or I could also use this tool to put it in a different format. Say I have Fusion on my Mac, and I wanted to have it in a Fusion format. I could use this tool to convert it for that. That's not what we're going to do today. Today we're going to select the powered on machine. It needs to be a machine you have administrator access to. I had a Linux box I used for this, so I put root and I put the password. Right, and it logs in and tries to get the information about the machine, and then it wants to know the esxi host you want to put it on. I guess I'll go ahead and do that. I'm kind of making this super easy. I wanted you guys to figure some stuff out for yourselves, but apparently I'm just going to do it all for you. So give it a name. Right, and then it asks where you want to put it. We only have the data store. So this is the important tab, the options tab. You probably want to edit this data to copy. You want to click on advanced, destination layout, and you probably want to change these to thin provisions so we don't take up all of our disk space. Then you'll hit next, and you'll review the different things, and then hit finish, and it'll actually start the process of copying the information over. Here's where I tried last night and it failed because my wireless network timed out apparently. So I switched over to wired network this morning and it ran. It took 28 minutes to copy the VM up. So that's the vCenter standalone converter. There's some other options. If you had an esxcli host you wanted to connect to and pull the machine from, you could do that. Backup or third-party images. I haven't used that before. Hyper-V server. I don't have a Hyper-V server, so I'm not going to use that. Power on machine. You can do this local machine. I would warn you if you're on a Windows machine with a gigabytes, multiple, 500 gig disk, you probably don't want to try that. It will take a long time. You probably don't want to try it if you're, you probably don't want to try that. Not your local machine unless you have a destination that has a lot of disk space and a lot of time. The road machine, like I said, you probably want to make sure that you have admin access. If you try to use a Windows machine and you don't have admin access to that Windows machine, I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. I haven't actually tried it, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. So that's the GUI tool for doing some VM conversions. The final thing I want to show you is the esxcli. Esxcli. First thing you need to do to use the esxcli is probably go to your, I'm looking for my esxcli host browser window. Whatever. I'll connect again. How about that? First thing you want to do is go to your esxcli host and then 2.0.1.5. Go to your esxcli host and log in. And then you want to go to host, actions, services, and enable SSH. I already enabled it, so that's what line says disable. So you want to go here, yours will say enable SSH, right? And then when you SSH into the box, I'll get out. If you SSH in, log in with the same password you used for the web interface. Now you're in here and you have this. You have a normal Linux command prompt. You can do like normal Linux things. I would kind of recommend that you don't do anything stupid. Like don't do this. That would be dumb. Don't do that. But there's this esxcli command line utility that lets you do some different things. So I gave you some commands on the lab sheet to run, specific commands to show you some things, but also want you to spend some time exploring different commands to try to find some useful commands you might think are helpful. And the way you can do that is how I just typed esxcli-help. If you hit enter, it'll do the same thing. So for example, if I decided I wanted to try to find something interesting about the network, I could do esxcli network, hit enter, and that would show me the possible options for running under network. So then I could do the same thing and type vSwitch. Tab complete does not work. vSwitch, standard, list. And that showed me information about my vSwitches. So that might be something that's useful. So the last part of the lab, after you run the commands I gave you to run, I want you to, look around and try to find at least 3 useful commands that might be helpful for some reason and explain why you think they might be helpful. So let's see, storage. So then you do core. I know what this does. Core storage commands. Device list. So there we go. I listed the status of storage devices. That's pretty exciting stuff. So that's the intent of the esxcli part. Basically show you how to get in and how it works and how you can use the built-in help functions to kind of try to figure out what you want to do. So like I said, I give you a small number of commands to run. for that, and then I also want you to come up with at least 3 commands that you might think might be useful for some reason. So that's pretty much it.